Hello, and welcome to the In the Know Women Show. I'm your host, Dottie LaRonge, and today I'll be speaking with Dr. Jessica Van Fleet Green, a physician leader. We'll learn what that means and also about her professional experience and her progression from early influences to the educational paths and even her own health and wellness practices. This will be a very informative episode, and I look forward to all that we'll be learning. Hello, Jessica.
Hi, Dottie.
We're so excited to have you here today. And what is a physician leader?
Well, I am first and foremost a family doctor, and over the course of my career have gone into leadership, like many physicians, a little bit by accident. It's not necessarily something that a lot of physicians aspire to do, and it certainly was nothing I aspired to do, but found myself in various positions that put me in as a leader, and found that I, in certain areas, excel in that and enjoy it, and felt like it was important to consider pursuing that.
What were your first early contributions?
Yeah, I mean, I think my early contributions and early influences, are you talking about from sort of early childhood or once I started my career?
Probably a little of both.
A little of both. Well, I grew up in a household where medicine was normalized. My mom was a nurse and my father was a retired Army medic. And I had an aunt that was a nurse, and I had an uncle that was a nurse.
Oh my goodness.
And so I was raised around medicine. Medicine was talked about in the household. And so, it was very normal for me to think about that. And I was very comfortable around it. So I think that that was probably one of my early influences where I saw a path to do something in healthcare, and I sort of knew I would either do that or maybe become a teacher. And so there's a lot of practical components of that because I saw both of them as providing a stable living. And I didn't grow up in a financially privileged home, and it was very ingrained in me that you go to college, you get a functional degree that makes you a living and sort of start your life. And so that was sort of the expectation and something that felt also very normal. So yeah, I think that healthcare or teaching was something that was very normal and expected, and something that I was drawn to. And then I started undergrad and saw medicine as a way to both teach and do healthcare, but I knew I didn't want to be a nurse. I wanted to chart my own path. So I actually started off my undergrad degree as in rehab medicine and doing prosthetics and orthotics. So I helped people who were amputees or who had some sort of disability and needed adaptive equipment. And so that was my undergrad degree, and again, something that would start me on my career path. I wouldn't have to go and do an advanced degree. I could do it with an undergrad and start working. And so there were a lot of influences early on there that then shifted me to medical school.
Tell us about your professional progression.
Yeah, so like I said, so I got my undergraduate degree in rehab medicine. And while I was an undergraduate at University of Washington, I had a boyfriend who is now my spouse who was pre-dental. And so he was pursuing an advanced degree, and you go through undergrad there, and I did a lot of the pre-med and biology classes and that sort of thing. And so I met a lot of people who wanted to go to medical school. And so it sort of became part of my peer group and people who wanted to pursue medicine. And at the time, I was also working for Seattle Children's. I got a part-time job to help pay for college and my living expenses. And I was a research coordinator both in the departments of endocrinology, and I did patient support in nephrology for patients who are on dialysis. Many of them actually who had been victims of the Jack-in-the-Box E. coli outbreak in the early 90s in the state of Washington. And so I really took an interest in that type of medicine that was, beyond the scope of what I was working on in my undergraduate degree. and then was able to be influenced by a lot of physicians, some of whom I became their house sitters or their dog sitters or their babysitters. And so I got a window into their life in a way that was never expected. And several of them took me under their wing and encouraged me to go on, and sort of gave me the confidence that it was possible. And so it was really wonderful. And then again, I was watching my now spouse go through it and go through the application process and looking at student loans. And so it became something that was accessible in a way that I never thought could be. My medical school application was all about becoming a pediatrician. I was very intent on becoming a pediatrician, very specifically a pediatric subspecialist. I wanted to do research and potentially work in academics and in a setting that I was used to at Seattle Children's. And obviously I pivoted away from that pretty drastically, and but still became a family doctor and took care of a lot of children. And I really did that because I went through the first 2 years of medical school and then went onto the wards as a third year. And I was one of those med students that loved everything. And so I couldn't pick. I loved my trauma surgery rotation, and I had amazing mentors. And then I did an anesthesia rotation, and I thought, oh gosh, this would be great. I would love to be an anesthesiologist. And I did internal medicine and loved that. And so you really go through that and realize, oh my gosh, like what am I gonna pick? Like what am I gonna be when I grow up? And it was very hard to choose. And of course, University of Washington, especially at the time, had a huge primary care influence. It's what was one of the top primary care medical schools in the country. And so I was heavily influenced with that, with some groups that I had joined, and became a representative for the family medicine program as a student delegate in their House of Delegates. And so I started getting these influence from family medicine and realized, okay, well, family doctors get to do a little bit of urgent care and a little bit of geriatrics. They can deliver babies, which I loved delivering babies, and then they get to see the babies that they deliver. And so it became a very natural progression that, oh, well, I should become a family physician. I love all types of medicine. I'm comfortable sort of living in gray and being, going an inch deep and a mile wide. That didn't feel uncomfortable to me. And so that's what I did. So I became a family physician and trained here in Olympia through one of the University of Washington programs at St. Pete's, and then really wanted to dedicate my practice to young families.
So Jessica, please tell me about your first practice and where was it?
So I was practicing in Yelm, Yelm Family Medicine. That was my first job out of residency. I spent a lot of time out there my third year of residency getting to know the practice a little bit and trying to figure out if that would be a good place for me to work. I sort of went back and forth if I wanted to be employed by a health system or if I wanted to go into private practice. And I really loved the people. I loved the patient panel. I loved all of the partners out there. And many of whom are still very good friends of mine. And so that is where I started. And I coaxed one of my co-residents. I was like, hey, come check out this practice with me. Let's go there together. Mm-hmm. And at the time, they didn't have any obstetrics out there. So if you were pregnant and lived in the area, you had to drive all the way into Olympia or Tacoma for your routine pregnancy visits. And so her and I went out there and started a small obstetrics practice together as part of our, general family medicine work. We did urgent care, and we mostly accepted the babies that we delivered into our panel. So yeah, it just was a very special experience to be out there. And when I was really thinking about it, and of course, I think about it differently now, but I was like, I want to go out to more of a rural practice because that's where I'm going to learn to be a doctor. It's where I'm going to do urgent care. I'm going to get experience, which of course I did. but now I look back on that and like, that's not really what being a doctor is about, right? I mean, really what I learned is how do you listen to people? How do you connect with people, right? And that's what I know now. But my late 20s, early 30s self, I didn't have that experience that I have now. But and so I went there and stayed there until 2017, when I made the shift in full-time or exclusively into skilled nursing facility care. Throughout that, though, I was a clinical adjunct faculty for the University of Washington, and I taught residents. And that really also brought me a lot of joy. I love teaching and having residents out there at the practice, and then also going and teaching on the weekends at St. Pete's through part of the residency program, which I did up until 2019, was a big part of my career and brought me a lot of professional fulfillment. So.
And I'm sure you're still in contact with some of those residents that are now doctors and specialists.
Oh, yes, and I was able to recruit a couple of them to the practice out at Yelm, and so that was nice. So I maybe had ulterior motives to bring some of them on as partners as I was teaching them. So, no, I am. I'm in contact with some of them, and I think it really was a rewarding experience, and I'm glad that I had the experience of what it's like to be part of a private independent practice. It is a little bit of it's uncommon at this point. I think that less than 20% of practices are owned independently now. Mm-hmm. And so there is a part of me that really wants to make sure that we protect that, and that we really think about the value of these practices who are owned and run by physicians who are passionate about the work, who know this type of medicine, and I think that that's really important. We're in an area where there's a lot of venture capital mm-hmm. in medicine, and a lot of health systems that are buying up a lot of private practices. I think certainly there is a place for that, so I don't want to pass judgment one way or another. And I also really want to emphasize the value and quality of care that independent practices bring to our communities.
And how about the skilled nursing experience?
Completely by accident, got into skilled nursing facilities and geriatric care. And that was in 2014 when I had a newborn. And a couple of my other partners had said, we think that you would be good at this, and skilled nursing facilities don't have enough medical directors, and we could work together and help share call burden, and we need that sort of help, and maybe you should give it a try. And I had done, of course, some skilled nursing facility and training, and I was like, I never really had thought about that. So my partners encouraged me to help out in a skilled nursing facility by taking over a medical directorship role, and that was in late 2014, early 2015. And it was really then that I experienced physician leadership for the first time. I mean, I owned my own practice with a group and with my partners, so there was inherent leadership in that, but never really as a appointed leadership position, and certainly not in a professional capacity like that. And so I was a medical director of a skilled nursing facility, and it became clear to me that I really had a passion for geriatric care that I had never really known. So I sort of unexpectedly tapped into really that joy and love of working with elders. And I loved that I got to go in and there was no time pressure. It wasn't people scheduled appointments with me. I went in, and if they needed me to spend an hour with them, I spent an hour with them. If they needed me to spend 5 minutes with them, I spent 5 minutes with them. So it felt very like individualized care. And the first skilled nursing facility I had a secure dementia unit. And I was looking at the quality of the skilled nursing facility and working with some of the leadership in the building, and we were not hitting our quality metric marks, in part because we were overutilizing certain types of medications called antipsychotics. And so it was also really there that I embarked on sort of a first quality improvement project that ended up being very simple and looking at different ways to prescribe and different ways to treat patients with dementia. And so when I started looking at that, I really developed a love for that type of work and that type of quality improvement. So I did that. I was working in the community. I took another skilled nursing facility. I ended up leaving my private practice and leaving behind obstetrics and primary care.
Things you loved.
Things that I really loved. And again, very unexpected. I never would have thought that my career would take that turn. But I really liked where it was going. I also had 2 babies at the time. And I was feeling the pull of, running a practice, running 2 skilled nursing facilities, and then trying to raise a family as well. So it was just too much. And so I shifted. And right around that same time, I was asked to work a little bit part-time in a leadership capacity with a local independent physician association, happened to be one that I was a shareholder of. Became very close with the CEO, who's still a friend of mine. And so then my leadership in medicine took a completely different trajectory, where I started looking at building population health infrastructure and looking at management services organizations and those sorts of things, which again was completely by accident, nothing I had aspired to do, but got into it and loved it.
Describe the significance of a fully capitated,
Yeah.
I'm difficult with understanding that one, health plan, and value-based care and population health initiatives.
Yeah, those are great questions. And there's a lot of overlap, and there's not necessarily standardized definitions. But I think of value-based care as an umbrella term. And it can be something as little as rewarding or incentivizing a healthcare team for quality metrics, to give a little bit of skin in the game, something that we call upside risk. For instance, a payer or a health plan could come in and say, we're going to give you a bonus, or we're going to pay you differently if you meet certain quality metrics, like 80% of your patients over the age of 65 get a pneumonia vaccine or something like that. So that's just sort of dipping your toe into the value-based world. Or you can go all the way to the other end of the spectrum and have what we call a fully capitated plan, which is the work that I do now in PACE programs, which is Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. And what that means is that you get paid a monthly fee, and with that monthly fee, you take complete care of the patient. Whether they're going to the emergency room, whether they need a vaccine, whether they need to come and spend the day with you in the clinic and get IV fluids, go to an emergency department or need surgery. You are totally responsible for that type of care, and that's a fully capitated type of arrangement.
How about being a DMAC member?
Yeah, and that's a completely different type of work and a very small part of what I do. That really arose out of the pandemic. And they needed some representation from people who do geriatric or skilled nursing facility care. It's the Disaster Medical Advisory Committee for the state of Washington. And so I was asked to, I think that it may have been an application process, I can't recall. It was mid-pandemic, and the state needed some expert consultation on that. And so we have periodic meetings where we talk about infrastructure and how we do disaster preparedness and disaster management, look at crisis standards of care and that sort of thing. So certainly not part of my day job, a very small consulting type of work that I'm a volunteer on a committee for the state of Washington.
How about PALT Med?
Yeah, so I am the president of the board for PALT Med, which is the Society for Post-Acute and Long-Term Care Medicine. I've been heavily involved in that work since 2015 when I took over my first skilled nursing facility. It previously was known as AMDA, which was the American Medical Directors Association. I was able to obtain an extra certification, which was part of the initials, after my name for being a certified medical director for post-acute and long-term care. And so we are a group of dedicated healthcare professionals. We have nurse practitioners, we have a pharmacist, and then the rest physicians. And we work to help educate those in skilled nursing facilities. We do political advocacy. We work very closely with WACA and Leading Age, which help represent skilled nursing facilities. We just actually met on Tuesday and talked about the dismantling of the ACIP by removing the 17 members by HHS. And so we're working on a response to that, and how do we at the local level make sure that we are influencing evidence-based practice and sound scientific evidence regarding vaccines, particularly those that influence elders and those who are in post-acute and long-term care or live with chronic disease.
This is not on my list, but I have the question, and that is the things that you implemented at the nursing skilled facilities. Are any of them being carried out in other facilities now?
Oh, I certainly hope so. You know, when you're a medical director, you have your scope of influence in the facility, and you hope that you build infrastructure that stays after you leave. And so, so certainly it is my hope that there are things that are still in place. I feel like, you know, I helped build infrastructure there, of course, with the help of the framework given to me by AMDA and now PaltMed. On improving safety and looking at the way we think about medications, particularly psychotropic medications, as well as how we look at anticoagulation management, which influences you know, stroke prevention for people with atrial fibrillation and various other disorders. So I hope that things are still in place, even though I don't have any skilled nursing facilities anymore. Part of my work is taking total care of a person and their family and wherever they live. And health is so much more than just the medications we prescribe and diagnosing them with illness. It includes things like, you know, what type of environment do you live in? It also includes very simple things like area rugs, which is so pertinent because I'm sort of standing on one now. It's a good way to make somebody who does geriatric care twitch, is walking into their home and seeing area rugs. It's a huge trip hazard for people who live independently in their home and are an older adult. Grab bars in bathrooms. And so, again, I think that it's not a traditional type of medicine. I'm going in and thinking very holistically about an individual and things that are going to keep them healthy for the long run, keeping them moving, having grab bars in their bathroom, lifting up the area rugs so they don't trip, putting things within reach, and really thinking about proactive ways to keep them out of the hospital.
I think you must have talked to my daughter. She's come in the house and removed every
Good for her.
rug I
That's
have.
a good daughter.
All of my dishes are down where I can reach them
good.
now. I mean, it's preventative.
Preventive.
It's not that you are too old to do anything, but it's preventative so that you don't go into the skilled nursing facility.
Right. Yes. There is nothing better than I would like to do than also remove all of the ladders and Tylenol PM from people's homes. That's another big one. So it is sometimes the little things that make a big difference. And when you do this and when you see people hospitalized, you know, it breaks your heart when you find like, oh my gosh, they tripped over an area rug and broke their hip, you know, and you just, it beats you up. So
Our executive producer stated that she met you at a Senior Action Network event, and it was called Living Well, Living Long. And she was there this last year, and you were the keynote speaker.
I was.
She was very, very impressed with what she was learning from that. Tell us about your participation in that.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I'm glad that that she got something out of it. I was asked to do it again just because I've had so many affiliations with several skilled nursing facilities and home health, and I think one of my former executive directors for a skilled nursing facility asked that, or gave my name as a recommendation as someone who might come to speak.
Why are these expos about living well and living longer important?
Yeah, I think that that's a great question. You know, I think knowledge is power, of course, and it is hard to find physicians and primary care practitioners, including nurse practitioners and physician associates, that can spend a lot of time talking about the breadth of topics, right? And so I think it's really an augment to the care that you're receiving in your primary care offices to learn more about, beyond just this medication or this intervention, what other things do I need to be doing and what other resources do I have? So again, when I think about some of the messaging that was in that conference, it was talking a lot about advanced care planning. There was representation from home health groups, from caregivers, caregiver support. Hospice was there talking about, everything from what sort of advanced care planning and end-of-life planning do you need, to then support groups after love and loss, right? So I think that it's just important to be connected with that community, and I think that if the pandemic taught us anything, it was the profound impact of social isolation and what that did to impact people's health negatively. No matter what medication or no matter how healthy they were, if you are socially isolated and you have maybe mental health issues as a result of the social isolation, you're not healthy and you can't be. And so, again, I think the prevailing message through that was move your body and stay connected to your community in some way, shape, or form. And again, that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But I do think that that's really important for people to have resources at their fingertips on how we work that and how we really supplement the healthcare community with knowledge and power. And I like doing those sorts of events. I really, again, see my role as an educator in a way to help with prevention efforts. And I have subject matter expertise. And it's interesting, too, because I feel like we are in an era where people really want a lot of quick fixes. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of gimmicks, and there's conferences on how to live forever. And, and I think that it exploits people, firstly, and so I worry about that. And I think the reality is that we all know that we don't get out of this life alive, right? And we need to think about things, and we need to talk straight about what people need to prepare for and plan for, and make the most of what we have, and optimize, I think, our well-being. So I accepted gladly to go and give that talk, and really use it as an opportunity to say there's just no easy way around movement and healthy eating and avoiding smoking and excess alcohol and medications that maybe do more things to you than for you. And so, I saw that as an opportunity to talk about that and to have open dialogue and to normalize conversations about advanced care planning and serious illness and how we talk about our families and with our families about next steps and what our goals of care are. So,
how do you have all the energy for this past and present?
Yeah, I think I have a lot of support from a wonderful family. And I don't think that I would be sitting here or being able to do all the things that I've done without the support of them. And so that helps give me energy. I would not say that I have always had the best balance. I'm maybe not the best role model for work-life balance. I think it's hard. Though now almost 20 years as a physician, I'm finally at that place where I feel like I have it a little more figured out. But certainly early career, I didn't. And I am sort of naturally an energetic person. I don't drink coffee. Which sort of surprises people. I don't really do a lot of caffeine. I'll do a Diet Coke every now and then, but otherwise I'm pretty hyper. And so I don't do caffeine intentionally because I'm a little too hyper on it. So I am energetic and I like to stay busy. And
I don't think you eat in excess either.
Well,
I think you keep trim.
Yeah. I follow a pretty strict regimen for diet. self-impose, some my body has imposed on me. I actually have a lot of food sensitivities. So, and I've always been an avid exerciser. I was a long distance runner. I ran in college for my freshman year. And after I had babies, really saw it as a way to exercise and also get out. And I had a double running stroller, and my kids logged a lot of miles in a stroller. They have seen all of Olympia and various places. They've been in many races with me in a stroller. Ooh. And it was a way, I think, to get out and stay busy and manage a stressful job and 2 little kids. And also they slept great in the stroller. So, and you know, there were many a times where they would be holding up books and I would be reading the book as I was running. And so they got to experience nature, rain, shine. It's like, I'm going to have tough kids. They need to know what it's like living in the Pacific Northwest. I had a special rain drape that went over the stroller, and we went out and did it. So.
And what about personal hobbies?
Yeah, so again, I was a lifelong runner and up until just a few years ago. And I had to have my hip replaced, one of them, my left hip. And so I had to give up distance running. And so I did. I lost kind of a big part of my life and a big hobby. I luckily have another hobby, which is very time consuming and also a huge passion of mine, and that's being an equestrian. And so I remember going in to the surgeon and saying, I have accepted the fact that you may tell me that I may never be able to run again, but if you tell me that I can't get on a horse again, I'm leaving. And so I think he didn't love the idea that I was getting back on a horse, but was supportive of it. And that was the point of getting the replacement, so I could get part of my life back. And so I have horses, and I ride with my daughter, and I ride dressage, and it's a big part of our life, and really for the whole family. I think a little bit sad for my husband and my son, who just sort of get roped into having to do things because they don't ride themselves. But yeah, they're supportive at least.
But your son plays a sport.
Yes, so my son is a big soccer player, and he is on a club league here in Olympia, Black Hills. And so he keeps us very busy with that, and we have a goal set up on our property, and we luckily have acreage, so that gives him plenty of opportunity. Though I told him I will not be a goalkeeper for him anymore because his foot has gotten so strong. That but I will shoot on him, and he accepts that Mom's foot isn't very strong, but I get him enough of exercise here and there, enough of a challenge every now and then to get some good shots in. So,
is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Well, you know, before we started filming, you and I were just casually talking about the path to medicine and one that I've chosen. And I think when people ask me about becoming a physician and wanting to go into healthcare, including one of my kids has interest in it, the biggest thing that I say to them is do it because you're passionate about it and because you want to make a difference and because you love medicine. Because that's really the only way, I think, to stay satisfied in the field and to avoid burnout. You know, this going to medical school and committing your life to medicine really is, it's part of your life. It's not just a job. And I think it's part of a life. Again, I said that I have a very supportive family. You know, it really is something that you have to commit to, and it takes you away from your family. And it causes sleepless nights, and you miss holidays, and you miss weekends. And so if you're going to do that, you need to really be passionate about it and be committed to it and want to do it for the greater good, I think, of society and for the health and benefit of others.
You mentioned an analogy of, at one point, people were told, we need teachers, go be a teacher. Mm-hmm. We need nurses, be a nurse. Mm-hmm. And tell me your reflection on that. That was very interesting.
Yeah, and I've only recently reflected on that, and I can't remember where I was. I was at a conference recently where they talked about this and how, you know, we really used to encourage people to go into a needed field. And they used teaching as an example and how they really pushed for a lot of educators for a long period of time, and then the career became flooded. And so then you didn't have enough positions, and you had all these people who maybe they didn't have aspirations to become a teacher, but became one. And then not only was it not their passion, but then it was hard to find a position. And so it was reinforcing, in the same with nurses, though. Certainly I can't imagine having too many nurses at this point, because we have such a shortage right now. That said, when people come to me and say, there's a nursing shortage, should I become a nurse? My answer is exactly the same. Like, do not become a nurse because they're needed. Become a nurse because you're passionate about. Being a nurse is a hard job. You know, it is a very intimate role. You have such a special opportunity to connect with people, and if you are not passionate about it and you do not have a calling to do that type of work, you should not. And you know, it's really hard, and I have seen that in my own family. You know, you bear the burden of a lot, and so I think it's important to be passionate about what you do. And again, I had alluded earlier on, I came from a place where I wanted to do either healthcare or teaching because it was practical. I knew that I, would make a living that would support myself. And so that was sort of ingrained in me. And I think that, my children are not in that position where they have to think about that, like I think I did when I was growing up. And the era is just so much different now. And so I encourage them to think about things that they're good at and that they are passionate about. And so again, as they speak to me, one has interest on and off about being a surgeon or going to medical school, and she sort of oscillates back and forth between that and law school, and most recently thinking about business school. And so we just think about what you're passionate about, what you're drawn to. My youngest really doesn't seem to have an interest in medicine. It kind of grosses him out. He hates blood, and and I'm just like, I don't really think that's your calling, and I think you will have another passion, and I would never encourage them to do medicine because it's a noble field, right? I want them to do what's going to make them happy and what they feel drawn to.
An example of that is one of my granddaughters went to Seattle U to be a nurse. Great grades, loved it, and after 2 years decided she didn't want to be a nurse because she didn't want to take care of people after they were sick. Yeah. She wanted to keep them from getting sick. So she switched her degree then and went to Bastyr University and became a nutritionist and health science. So
wonderful.
She caught on. I was disappointed. I wanted her to be a nurse.
Right, yeah.
Because it just sounded good. But she said, I don't want to take care of sick people. I want to get them before they get sick.
Before they get sick, right.
And so I appreciate the analogy that you gave earlier, that if it's not a passion, don't do it.
Yep, I agree.
So what's next for you, Jessica?
Yeah, well, I am working on a really fun project right now. I had the very unique honor to help establish a PACE program in South King and Pierce County in 2021. And it was through that experience that I had, working in value-based care and also knowing skilled nursing facility care and doing elder care, that allowed me that opportunity to help build that program, a program that is still thriving. And I was recruited to do the same thing. And so I'm starting over again and doing another PACE program. This one is in Oregon. And I'm really excited. We're in the initial phases right now, still sort of in the application process and building the building. Well, the building is already built, but building out the interior of the building.
And this is the post-acute.
This is the PACE program. So this is program of all-inclusive care of the elderly.
All-inclusive care.
Yep, they don't live in skilled nursing facilities. They live in the community. And so you are offering a very unique space for people to come in. We have a day center where they can come in, families get respite, they get healthy meals, and then they go to their home. And in the center, we have a gym, and we also have a clinic. We have what we're calling the tranquility room, which is sort of lower stimulation for people just to go in and get rest if they need it. And it is really a special place and such a unique opportunity for me because I came in at the ground level. So I have had my hand in picking everything from our examination tables to how we've designed our dirty utility room and how we did the autoclave and passing through to clean utility. And so it's been really fun to use my years of clinical experience to design a purpose-built space. And I could talk about it for hours. But, just little things like when you walk in, the examination table is actually a chair that is only 18 inches high. So if you're transferring somebody from a wheelchair or they're using other assistive devices, it allows them to get into an examination table that is also a chair. So it has a back, that back folds down, and then the table raises up. So it helps with fall prevention, it gives easy access. We're doing things to enhance efficiency of healthcare team. So when we take the vital signs equipment are integrated to the electronic health record via Bluetooth. So we've eliminated the need for manual entry, which saves a ton of time and reduces error. So there's a PACE center now that serves South King and Pierce County zip codes. There are also other PACE programs in the state of Washington for King County, and there's also one in Spokane. So I think PACE is getting a lot more traction since the pandemic. There was a wonderful article in the New York Times about PACE being it's not new. It's newly discovered, I think, by a lot of people. It's been around since the 1970s, but as an emerging way to help support people in their home and their community, and an excellent alternative to skilled nursing facilities.
Right.
Yeah.
So interesting. Your life is never dull.
It's never dull.
Never dull.
And I do think it's worth noting, I, like many of my colleagues, were very beat up after the pandemic, right? It was a very dark time, and it was a very difficult way to practice medicine. And, I truly felt the weight of the world as a skilled nursing facility medical director and someone who is having to make such difficult decisions. And helping start a PACE program that really looked at a different way to do medicine, where people don't go and live in a skilled nursing facility, but instead can live in the community. It restored my love of what I do and made me, want to be the job that I retire from. And I didn't just help build the program, I practiced as well. I'm very much looking forward to, once we start this next program, practicing again and seeing patients again, because I love the experience of spending time with patients and hearing their story.
Oh, yes.
And in the PACE program, I get hour-long appointments, which I have never had the luxury of in my career. And so I really do. I get to unpack a lot with them and think about what's important to them, what their goals are, and how I help them achieve their goals. And it can be something as little as, I want to be able to take my dog for a walk, or I want to go do blocks with my grandkids, to anything. And so it's really about meeting people where they're at, and I've found it very meaningful.
Quite satisfying.
Very satisfying.
Quite satisfying.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Van Fleet, and all who tuned in today for the 17th episode of In the Know Women Show. Have a healthy and wonderful summer.